Hello. Chapter 4. This is a good one. And yes, that is a unicorn. Yes, that is a shaft of light. It's just the light. And I painted that years ago. Honest work. Stepping through the gate of the mansion, this is a good chapter, was like entering a portal to the spirit world. That's what Kyoshi imagined. It was a complete transition from one set of rules to another, from a dull, mindless place where only the currencies you could spend were sweat and time, sowing your seeds and baiting your hooks in the hope of staving off hunger for another season, to a mystical universe where rituals and negotiations could make you supreme in a single day. That was a lot of words, and that was a heck of a paragraph. I think I might have to do that one over. Stepping through the gate of the mansion was like entering a portal to the spirit world. Okay, I get that. Or so Kyoshi imagined. So that's what Kyoshi imagining. Stepping into the Yun's avatar mansion is like stepping into the spirit world. From Khalsang's stories. It was a complete transition from one set of rules to another. From a dull, mindless place where the only currencies you could spend were sweat and time, sowing your seeds and baiting your hooks in the hope of staving off hunger for another season, to a mystical universe where rituals and negotiations could make you supreme in a single day. Dude, what a paragraph. Their passage was marked by the cool blip of shade underneath the rammed earth wall. Rangi nodded at the two watchmen, veterans of the Earth King's army, who stiffened their necks and bowed to her in deference. Lured by better pay, though, into Jianzhu's service, they'd kept their dished, wide-brimmed helmets, but painted them over with the sage's personal shade of green. Kyoshi always wondered whether that was against the law or not. Inside, the vast garden hummed with conversation. Sages and dignitaries in far-off lands constantly flowed in and out of this amazing estate, and many of them enjoyed conducting their business amongst the flowers and sweet-smelling fruit trees. An overdressed merchant from Omashu haggled with a Fire Nation procurement officer over cabbage futures, ignoring the cherry blossom petals falling into their tea. Two elegant northern water tribe women, arm in arm, meditatively walked a maze pattern raked into a field of pure white sand. In the corner, a morose young man with carefully disheveled hair bit the end of his brush, struggling with a poem. Quite a string. This is just all what's going on around the castle of the Avatar Yun. Any of them could have been benders of the highest order. It always gave Kyoshi a thrill to see so many masters of elements gathered in one place. When the estate was full of visitors like today, the air felt alive with power. Sometimes literally so when Khalsang was around and in a playful mood. Auntie Mui. New character alert. Auntie Mui. Head of the kitchen staff, appeared from one side of the hallways and bounced over them, looking like a plump rolling down a hill. She used her momentum to deliver a hard swat to the small of Kyoshi's back. Kyoshi helped grip the jar tighter. "Don't carry food around where the guests can see it," Auntie Mui hissed. "Up the service stairs entrance, where you can't be seen." She hustled Kyoshi down the steps of a tunnel, oblivious to the hard pump of Kyoshi's forehead took against the top support beam. Bang! They shuffled down the corridors that still smelled of sawdust through the plaster. It was more obvious down here how new and hastily constructed this complex really was. Very new and built fast. The roughness of the hallway was another one of these many little details that poked holes in the common illusion that under this roof that Jianzhu tried to uphold, his most exalted guest, down to his lowest employee, it was an illusion. The Avatar's presence was an uncomfortably recent blessing. I'm sorry, this writer is thick. He's very cogent. His words really, he often flips things around. The Avatar's presence on Earth, as recognized, was an uncomfortably recent, that's very new, blessing. Everyone was going through the motions at a very accelerated pace. "You were out in the sun too much today," Auntie Mui said. "Your freckles got darker again. Why don't you ever wear that concealer I gave you? It has crushed pearls in it. What? And look like a bloodless ghost, said Kyoshi. Better than looking like someone sprinkled star poppy seeds over your cheeks. I mean, here she wears white makeup, About the only things Kyoshi hated more than gunk on her skin were the warped, infuriating values that older folks like Auntie Mui had about facial complexion. It was yet another contradiction of the village, that you should make an honest living, toiling under the sun, but not look like it. In the game of rural Yokoyan, their beauty standards, Kyoshi had lost that round, among others. They climbed another set of stairs. Kyoshi remembering to duck this time, they passed through a hall for drying and splitting the immense amount of firewood needed to fuel the stoves. Auntie Mui tisked at the splitting maul that had been buried in the chopping block by the last person who used it, instead of being hung up properly on the wall. She wasn't strong enough to pull it out, and Kyoshi's hands were full. They entered the steamy, cavernous kitchen. They entered the steamy, cavernous kitchen. The clash of metal pans and roaring flames could have been mistaken for a siege operation. Kyoshi set the pickling jar down on the nearest table. The jar had been attached to her for so long, it almost felt like saying goodbye to a child. Don't forget, you have gift duties tonight, Rangi's voice said, and she startled to see her. She didn't think the firebender would have followed her into the house like this. Don't waste too much time here. You're not a maid. The nearby kitchen staff, some of who were maids, looked at them and scowled. Kyoshi winced. The villagers thought she was stuck up for living in the mansion. The other servants thought she was stuck up for her closeness to Yun. And Rangi, with her elite attitude, made this whole illusion worse. There was no pleasing anyone, though Rangi departed for the barracks. Kyoshi spotted an odd figure amongst the legions of white-clad cooks pounding away at the station. It was an airbender, and his orange robes pulled up to his shoulders. His paws were covered in flour, and he tucked his forest of a beard into his tunic. Kelsang should have been above ground watching the Avatar, or at least greeting a visiting sage. No cutting out dumpling wrappers amongst the cook. He looked up and he grinned when he saw Kyoshi. I've been banished! Jianzhu thinks my presence is causing Yun to prematurely dream about airbending. So we're trying to keep him focused on one element at a time. I need to feel useful, so here I am in the kitchen. Kyoshi sidled her way over to him. Let me help. For the past decade, Kelsang had essentially raised Kyoshi. He had used what leeway he had with the Southern Air Temple to reside in Yokoya as much as he could in order to look after Kyoshi. When he had to leave, he foisted upon different families, begged Ames to keep her fed, and after Jianzhu brought the Avatar to Yokoya for safekeeping, Kelsang twisted his old friend's arm to hire Kyoshi on. So remember, Kelsang was the airbender who was part of the original finding the Avatars. And here he is cooking in the kitchen because he has nothing better to do. He's done all this, saved the life of a child stranger for no reason other than he needed someone. In part of the Earth Kingdom, love was reserved solely for blood relatives. The monk was from a foreign land and the dearest person in the world to Kyoshi, actually. Which is why she knew his good cheer right now was completely fake. Rumors flew around that the once legendary friendship between Kuruk's companions had very deteriorated. Especially the relationship between Jianzhu and Kelsang. In the years since Kuruk's death, if the gossip was to be believed, Jianzhu had amassed wealth and influence unbecoming of a sage who was supposed to be dedicated solely to guiding Kuruk's reincarnation. So they're saying Jianzhu had grown rich, whereas Kelsang was still modest. Bending masters came to the house to pay to him, not the Avatar, and the decrees were normally made by the Earth Kings they bore Jianzhu's seal instead. Kelsang disapproved of this power-hungry actions and was at risk of being completely shunted to the side. Kyoshi didn't have the context around politics, but she worried about this rift that was growing between these two benders who had known each other for so long. It wasn't good, and it wasn't good for the Avatar. Yun adored Kelsang, but ultimately he was loyal to the Earthbender, Jianzhu, who had raised him and who had found him. Distracted by her thoughts, she didn't notice the little puff of flour fly from the table. White dust clouded her vision. She squinted at Kelsang, who was trying to hide the second shot above his palm. It wasn't me. It was a different airbender. I didn't get you. Kyoshi snickered and grabbed the flower bead out of the air, and it burst between her fingers. Quit it before Auntie Mui throws both of us out of here. Then quit looking troubled on my behalf, he said. It's not bad if I take a break from this Avatar business. I'll get to spend more time with you. We should go on a vacation, the two of us. Maybe see the Air Nomad's sacred sites. She would like that very much. Chances to share Kelsang's company got rare with the Avatar and his teaching as she sank into those mesh of world affairs. But lowly as her job was in comparison to the Avatar, she still had the same responsibilities and she had to show up every day. I can't. I have work. He rolled his eyes. Bah! I've never seen someone averse to fun since old Abbot No Fruit Pies Dorje. He flicked another blob of flour at her. She failed to flinch out of the way. Remember how the one airbender threw fruit pies? Gyatso in the Avatar. He threw, airbended fruit pies on the other monks as a joke. And this one monk was called, and it's an abbot, which means he's a head guy. No Fruit Pies. That was his name. I know how to have fun, Kyoshi whispered dignantly. From the head of the cutting board tables, Auntie Mui gave a tongue-curled whistle. Poetry time, said Auntie Mui. Everyone groaned. She was always out trying to enforce high culture on her workers. So that was her idea of it, at least. Lee, you start us off. The poor line cook stumbled out as he tried to compose on the spot while keeping count of his syllables. The weather is nice. Sun shining down from the sky. Birds are singing. Is that good? Auntie Mui made a face. That was awful. Where's your sense of balance, symmetry, contrast? Lee threw his hands up in the air. He was paid to fry things, not perform in the upper ring of Ba Sing Se. Can't someone give us a decent verse, said Auntie Mui. No volunteers. I've got cheeks like ripe, round fruit, Kelsang suddenly said. They shake like boughs in the storm. I blush bright red when I see a bed and leap at the sound of a horn. The room exploded in laughter. He had picked a well-known shanty popular with sailors and field hands, where you improvise raunchy words from the perspective of your object of unrequited affection. It was a game for others to guess what you were singing about, and the simple rhythm made manual labor more pleasant. Brother Kelsang, said Auntie Mui, be good. Be an example. He had. The entire staff was already chopping, kneading, and scrubbing to the raucous tune that he had said. I guess it was a song. I didn't sing it. It was okay to misbehave if the monk did first. I've got a nose like a dove-tailed deer. I run like a leaf on the wind, Lee sang, evidently better at this than haiku. My arms are slight and my coat is tight, and I don't have a thought for my kin. Mirai, a dishwater yelled out. He's got it bad for the greengrocer's daughter. The staff whooped over Lee's protests, thinking it was a good match, actually. Sometimes it didn't matter if they guessed right or not. Kyoshi, next! She's never here, so let's make the most of it. Kyoshi was caught off guard. Normally, she wasn't included in these household antics. She caught Kelsang's eye and saw the challenge. Fun, huh? Prove it. Before she could stop herself, the rhythm launched into a song. I've got 2 knives that are cast in bronze. They pierce all the way to the soul. They draw you in with the promise of sin, like the moth of the flame to the coal. The kitchen howled. Keep going, you naughty girl, shouted Lee. She even managed to throw off Kelsang, who looked at her very curiously. And he had a spark of recognition for whom she was describing. Kyoshi knew that it wasn't possible when she was simply tossing out the first words that came to her head. She thumped a length of dough onto the table in front of her to create percussion. I've got hair like the starless night. It sticks to my lips when I smile. I'll wind it with yours and we'll drift off course in a ship touching hearts all the while. Somehow the improvisation came to Kyoshi, very easy. She never considered herself a poet, or even had a body mind for that matter. That's a great word. Bawdy. B-A-W-D-Y. Means kind of making rhymes that are a little bit steamy, bawdy. It was if another person, someone had much more at ease with her own desires, was feeding her the right lines to express herself. And to her surprise, she liked how the inelegant lines made her feel. Truthful and silly and raw. For the way I walk is a lantern lit that leads you into the night. I'll hold you close, the most, until our end is in sight. Kyoshi didn't have time to ponder the darker turn her verse took before a sudden shot of pain went through her wrist. Kelsang had grabbed her arm and was staring at her, eyes wild and white. His grip squeezed tighter and tighter, crushing her flesh. His nails drew actually a little blood from both her skin and his. "You're hurting me," she cried out. The room was silent. Disbelieving, Kelsang let go, and she caught herself on the edge of the table. A map of purple was stamped on her wrist. "Kyoshi," Kelsang said, his voice constricted and airless. "Kyoshi, where did you learn that song?" End of chapter 4. Spoiler alert. I think it comes out in the beginning of the next chapter. How do they, I know what goes on, but I'm seeing how they word it. He tells her why she lost control. And the reason why he lost control was that poem was made by Kuruk, word for word. And it identifies Kyoshi right here in chapter 4 as the Avatar. Told you it was a good chapter. It's going to unfold more the next one. And then you get a little bit more of an explanation. But it says it at the beginning of the chapter, so it's not that big of a plot spoiler. It's not like we've gone and spoiled half the book. No, that's what's coming next. But it says, after Kelsang took her aside to an empty study, he spent half an hour tearfully apologizing for hurting her. He told her why she had lost the control. And she basically said, like it was the worst news she had ever heard in her life. And then the first thing she says about it is, "You're mistaken. No, it's Yun, not me." And then he tells a long story that we'll have to catch up to. But nope. Kyoshi, when pushed, shared one of Kuruk's most important love poems that he really hadn't shared with anybody, that Kelsang knew very well. And when she said it word for word, it was like, boom, it's her. Okay, pick it up next time.